Salam, peace be upon you, my friend. My name is Muhammad Laik Sabiki, the father of HOLOPHASE, the woven picture. So far, episodes 1 through 12. Before we step into the most monumental task we have ever attempted, building an entire universe from Phi alone, with no smuggling, no hidden assumptions, no common sense shortcuts, we must do something rare in the history of ideas. We must pause. Because we have already done something extraordinary. Across episode 1 to episode 12, we have not been learning physics. We have been rebuilding the meaning of physics from the ground up. Not by adding new particles, not by proposing new forces, but by asking a more dangerous question. What must be true for anything to be scientifically sayable at all? What must be present for a fact to even count as a fact? And the answer we kept circling back to, again and again, from different angles, was not matter, not energy, not space, not time. It was something more primitive. It was comparability, the capacity for the universe to be read. That is why everything we built so far is not extra introduction. It is the only honest preparation for Phi Cosmogenesis. Because if we try to build a universe from Phi without first building the discipline of reading, we will accidentally smuggle in the old world through the back door. So what have we woven exactly? Let's step back and see it, like a single landscape. Episode 1, The White Room, the only certain thing. We began in the simplest place imaginable, not in galaxies, not in equations, not even in existence. We began in what I called the White Room, the place where everything is stripped away until only one thing remains. We can notice. We can say, this is not that. Even if we doubt everything else, even if we doubt matter, time, space, language, this remains, the capacity for distinction. And we gave that irreducible capacity a name, Phi, not difference, not a thing, but the possibility that difference could be meaningful at all. And from the very start, we made a firewall promise. If the whole universe can be built from Phi, then every later concept must be earned and must reduce back to licensed comparison. If it can't, Phi is not complete, and the entire program fails cleanly. So episode 1 was not about content. It was about the first law of honesty. No claim without a comparator. Episode 2, The Great Shock. Energy is not a substance. Then we move to the first major destabilization, the first real wobble in the listener's trust in what they know. Because almost everyone carries a picture in their mind. Energy is stuff. It flows. It fills things. It transfers like water. But episode 2 said, no, energy is not a fluid. Energy is a ledger entry. Like a bank statement. A bank statement is not gold flowing through pipes. It is accounting. Numbers that remain consistent across transactions. In holophase language, energy is what you write down when you tally measurable activity in phi change inside a window. In spoken equation form, we carried the simplest bridge. E equals h bar times omega. Energy is a calibrated tally of cadence. And its partner, P equals h bar times kappa. Momentum is a calibrated tally of spatial phase structure. The shock is not the equations. The shock is the ontology. Energy is not the cause. Energy is the report. Conservation is not magic. It is bookkeeping integrity. And we inserted a prediction that quietly rewrites science. If energy is accounting, then any new energy claim must reduce to measurable phase activity tallies. Otherwise, it is metaphysical inflation. So episode 2 didn't just add an idea, it removed a superstition. Episode 3. Licensed windows. Reality must be clear enough to count. Then we confronted the brutal truth every real instrument knows. You never measure reality. You measure reality through a window. A window can be clear, or foggy, or biased, or drifting, or noisy. So HOLOPHASE doesn't let anything enter public science unless it passes the first gate, licensing. A licensed window is a region of measurement where comparisons remain stable enough to be meaningful. This was not a technical detail, it was a worldview shift. If an observation cannot be reproduced within declared window conditions, then it is not a stable public fact. It is a private mirage. This is where we reframed uncertainty. Uncertainty is not embarrassment. Uncertainty is the price of honesty. And we planted the seed that later becomes the firewall. Every claim must carry its window parameters, scope, and error bounds. Otherwise, it is not knowledge, it is storytelling. Episode 4. The first touchable primitive. A equals d phi. Only now, after comparability, after the ledger, after licensing, did we allow the first mathematical touch of the universe. We did not begin with particles. We did not begin with space-time. We began with the first lawful public object. A equals d phi. Say it slowly. A equals d phi. Means we cannot touch phi absolutely, but we can touch its change. And we spoke the core identity that reorganizes the meaning of measurement. We do not measure things. We measure differences. This is where the HOLOPHASE program becomes concrete, because d phi is not poetry. It is operational. Interferometers measure phase differences. Clocks measure phase cycles. Spectra measure phase gradients. All precision tools are comparators. So episode 4 planted the simplest, strongest pillar. The universe becomes measurable as change, not as substance. Episode 5. Tri-unity. Time, space, motion are three readings of one change. Then came the central HOLOPHASE twist. You listen to a melody and you can describe its rhythm, its shape, its movement, but it remains one melody. Likewise, from A equals d phi, we discovered that three readings rise together. Omega, cadence, the time shadow, kappa, variation, the space shadow, transport, the motion shadow. And the deepest claim was not three variables exist. The deepest claim was time, space, and motion are not containers. They are co-readouts of one differential reality. Audio native, we gave the tri-unity form. A equals omega dt minus k dot dx. Not as decoration, as the statement that the three shadows cannot be separated without breaking consistency. And this is where we imposed an unforgiving prediction. A stable phenomenon cannot show time without space or motion without cadence as independent primitives. If it did, tri-unity is false. So episode 5 didn't explain the world. It changed what world means. Episode 6. The infinite zoom. Infinite depth, finite access. Then we zoomed in, into a leaf, into a cell, into molecules, into atoms, into whatever is below atoms. And the lesson was not small things exist. The lesson was reality has unbounded descriptive depth. If phi is smooth where defined, then it can be differentiated again and again, creating an infinite vocabulary. Mathematicians call this the infinite jet, j to the infinity phi. But then the crucial humility. We never see infinity. We see finite slices, j to the n phi, because licensed windows have finite coherence. And even with perfect engineering, every window has a limit. So we put a firewall stake in the ground. If higher order detail improves prediction forever without hitting a ceiling, you're not reading reality, you're overfitting noise. So episode 6 gave the listener a permanent compass. Infinite depth, finite access. In episode 7, knots. Why whole numbers exist at all. Then we walked around the tree and returned to where we started. One loop. Not 0.9 loops, not 1.1 loops, because returning is precise. This was the doorway into topology, the moment we saw how integers can be forced by continuity. Audio native, we spoke the core law of quantization. The closed-loop integral of d phi equals 2 pi times n, where n is an integer, 0, 1, 2, 3, in text form. Integral over a closed loop of d phi equals 2 pi n. The meaning is devastatingly simple. If phi lives on a circle, then wrapping produces integers. Not because the universe is digital, but because circles have winding. And this is where particle-like discreteness becomes natural. A knot is not extra rope. It is a persistent obstruction. So episode 7 gave a new origin for quantization. Whole numbers come from going around. Episode 8. What objects really are. Once knots were real, the next question became inevitable. What is an object? And we refused the old answer, a chunk of substance. Instead, we used the shoelace metaphor. Tie a knot, pull the lace. The knot moves, but the knot remains. So an object is not stuff added to space. An object is a persistent pattern in phi's readability, often protected by topology. That is why electrons remain electrons. That is why identity persists under transport. So episode 8 gave the listener a new definition of thinghood. An object is a knot, not a brick. Episode 9, the universal ledger. Energy as a report, not a thing. Then we returned, deliberately, to the energy shock, because repetition is not weakness here. Holophase is abstract, so you need to hear the same truth from multiple angles until it becomes instinct. Episode 9 intensified the ledger metaphor. A bank account is not money moving through pipes. It is consistency across transactions. So energy is consistency across changes. The falling ball, the collision, the explosion, these are not energy moving. They are the ledger balancing across triunity readouts. And we repeated the essential reduction. Energy is a totally of phi activity inside the licensed window. So episode 9 locked the listener into the holophase habit. If someone says, energy did X, you ask, what phase activity tally are you referring to? What window? What uncertainty? Episode 10, How Laws Are Actually Found, Survivor Games. Then we confronted another cultural superstition, that laws are written into the universe like commandments. Instead, we told a different story. Imagine a million keys. Most don't turn. A few turn briefly. One turns every time. Laws are survivors, not decrees. They survive because they generate patterns that remain coherent under licensed comparison. So the law is not sacred. The law is selected. And this created a prediction that quietly governs everything that follows. Only grammars consistent with gauge invariance, topology, uncertainty, and windowing can persist as real laws. If an ungoverned equation outperforms governed ones reliably, this principle collapses. So, episode 10 made science feel like what it truly is: not worship, selection under constraint. Episode 11: Meaning without magic. Then we did something even more unsettling. We touched meaning. We said, meaning is not floating essence. Meaning is not cosmic intention. Meaning is what happens when a system can recognize a stable pattern, and that recognition improves prediction. A phase detector doesn't believe in faces. It detects a stable structure and labels it because the label helps. Likewise, minds and any predictive system become meaning engines by compressing stable phi patterns into usable categories. So table, friend, danger, cause, self are not mystical objects. They are licensed recognitions. And the firewall clause was crucial. True meanings must fail on counterworlds. If a meaning doesn't improve prediction, it is hallucination dressed as philosophy. So episode 11 gave the listener an honest foundation for semantics. Meaning is predictive compression. Episode 12: The immune system for truth, the firewall. And finally, we faced the civilizational problem. Errors spread. A flawed result gets published. It gets cited, it becomes assumed, and decades are lost. So episode 12 introduced the epistemic firewall. Knowledge must carry its verification kit. A claim is not just a sentence. It becomes a law object with scope, uncertainty, prediction contract, falsification terms, counterworld controls, revocation protocol, audit trail. This is science with an immune system. Not because we distrust science, but because we respect it enough to protect it from infection. And this is where the whole arc became visible. We did not merely build a theory. We built a method that can survive time. So episode 12 closed with a handoff. Now cosmogenesis can begin, because the method is alive. What we have actually built. So what have we woven from episode 1 to episode 12? Not a pile of ideas, a single engine. Here is the whole picture, in one breath. 1. Phi is the irreducible condition for readability. 2. Energy is a tally, not a substance. 3. Licensed windows decide what counts as public reality. 4. A equals d phi is the first touchable primitive. 5. Triunity says, time, space, motion are co-readouts. 6. Jets say, reality has infinite depth, but we see finite slices. 7. Holonomy forces integers from loops. 8. Objects are persistent knots, not chunks of stuff. 9. Energy again becomes the ledger of phi activity. 10. Laws are survivor grammars under constraint. 11. Meaning is recognition that improves prediction. 12. Firewall makes truth self-correcting across generations. And now we can say something that is both humble and terrifying. This program makes one overriding claim. Every scientifically meaningful statement about reality can be translated into licensed comparisons of phi patterns. If we find even one scientific fact that cannot, even in principle, be expressed that way, not hard to express, but impossible, then the HOLOPHASE foundation fails. Cleanly, honestly, with a precise autopsy. That is not weakness. That is what makes it science. Why this preparation matters for Pure Phi Cosmogenesis. Now we stand at the cliff edge. The monumental project ahead is not another season. It is an attempt to do what almost no worldview has dared to do with full honesty. Derive the universe from Phi alone. No smuggling. No pre-given time. No pre-given space. No pre-given matter. No pre-given energy as substance. No pre-given laws. No pre-given meaning. Only Phi. Only licensed comparison. Only step-earned structure. And because this is monumental, we must transition the listener with clarity. Everything we built from episode 1 to 12 was not extra. It was the training of the instinct. To ask for every claim, what comparison produces this? What window licenses it? What uncertainty bounds it? What would falsify it? What counterworld should kill it? In other words, you are not just learning a model, you are becoming a licensed window. The final invitation. So here we are. We have a new foundation. Phi as the root of readability. A equals d phi as the first measurable touch. Triunity as the grammar of dimensions. Topology as the birth of integers. Objects as persistent knots. Energy as ledger. Laws as survivors. Meaning as predictive recognition. Firewall as the immune system of truth. No religious metaphor is needed. This is not a temple. This is a construction site for reality. A disciplined build. A sequence of earned steps. And now, before Pure Phi Cosmogenesis begins, the listener is asked for one price of admission. Mental flexibility. Can you think about time without assuming it exists? Can you think about space without picturing emptiness? Can you think about objects without turning them into substances? If you can, you are ready, because the next journey is not just big. It is the deepest wager of the entire HOLOPHASE program. Either we build the universe from Phi, or we discover exactly where Phi is not enough. And either way, if we remain firewalled, civilization wins. Because the failure will be clean, informative, and real. We end where we began. The only thing we know for certain is that we can notice differences. From that thin thread, we will attempt to weave the whole tapestry. Not because we are certain we can, but because we are certain we must try. The alternative, continuing with beautiful fragmented confusion, is no longer acceptable. So the weaving so far is complete. And now, the universe awaits its derivation. Next, episode 13. First, Phi undifferentiated, Phi in itself. Then, Phi differentiated, Phi as readable change. Then, Pure Phi, Cosmogenesis, step by step, licensed by licensed step. Are you ready to earn reality? Always peace be upon you.